Yang stood at the edge of the massive arena, looking down at thousands of creatures from 100 different worlds. The stadium was filled with noise and excitement. Screens the size of buildings showed the face of the champion, a warrior named. His body was made of a clear crystal material that shined under the bright lights. The crowd cheered wildly. For 300 years, the arena of or had hosted the greatest fights in the galaxy. Warriors from every corner of space had come here to prove themselves, but none of them had ever been like. The champion had won 847 matches without losing even once. No one had even managed to hurt him. It was impossible to cut his skin. Energy weapons did nothing to him. Blades bounced off his body as if it was made of stone. He was the perfect fighter, and everyone knew it. Yang was human, and humans were not known for being warriors. His species was soft. They could be hurt easily. They were slow compared to many other creatures. Yet here he stood, preparing to challenge the greatest fighter the galaxy had ever seen. Many people thought he was crazy. Some people felt sorry for him. The human had arrived on or 3 weeks ago. He was not a warrior by nature. He was a scientist and an explorer. His friend Dr. Wu had come with him. She worked with machines and technology. Together, they studied different worlds and different creatures. They tried to understand how things worked. But Yang had become very interested in. He watched the champion fight many times. He studied every match carefully. What Yang saw was something that no one else seemed to notice. Yes was incredibly strong. Yes, his body could not be harmed, but was still alive. He still had eyes that blinked. He still had ears that heard. When something bright flashed near his face, his eyes would close automatically. When loud sounds happened, he would step back slightly. His body could not be hurt, but his mind still worked like any other mind. His nervous system still felt things. His brain still got tired. Yang spent hours watching old recordings of matches. He watched them again and again. He took notes. He drew pictures. He showed his observations to Wu, and she helped him understand the science behind what they were seeing. Wu was excited about what Yang had discovered. She told him that if he was right, then was not actually invincible. He just seemed that way because everyone was fighting him the wrong way. The idea seemed impossible to most people, but Yang believed in it. He decided to challenge the champion. When he told Wu what he wanted to do, she tried to stop him. "You will lose," she said. "You could get hurt, maybe killed." But Yang just smiled. He explained his plan to her. He showed her his calculations and his understanding of weaknesses. Wu listened carefully. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "It might work, but it is very dangerous. Are you sure?" Yang was sure. He had thought about it every day for 3 weeks. This was not about proving that humans were the strongest. It was about showing that strength came in many forms. It was about proving that understanding an enemy was more important than having a bigger body or a harder shell. The arena officials thought it was a joke at first. They almost did not allow the match, but the rules of or were clear. Anyone could challenge the champion. The officials saw that Yang was serious, so they allowed it. The news spread quickly across the galaxy. A human was going to fight. Most people started betting money against the human. The odds were very bad for Yang. Many people were ready to laugh at him. But Yang did not care what people thought. He spent the next days preparing. He did not train his body like a normal fighter would. Instead, he studied more. He watched more matches. He thought about movements and reactions. He worked with Wu to create some special equipment. They designed devices that would help him execute his plan. The arena officials checked everything. They said that nothing Yang had could really hurt, so everything was allowed. The merchant ran the betting section of the arena. He was a creature with 4 arms and blue skin. He looked at Yang one day and laughed. "You are brave, human, or maybe just stupid. Either way, your money will go to the champion's owners. Everyone in the galaxy has tried everything. Strength, speed, magic, technology, nothing works. Cannot lose. It is written in the stars." Yang just nodded politely. He did not try to explain his plan. Most people would not understand anyway. They believed that only strength could defeat strength. They could not see that sometimes the answer was much simpler than that. The night before the match, Yang sat with Wu in their small room. They looked out at the city of Or. Lights covered the buildings. Spaceships flew between the towers. Everything was beautiful and alive. "Are you afraid?" asked Wu. Yang thought about the question. "Not of losing," he said finally. "I am afraid of winning." Wu looked confused. "Why, winning is good." "Because if I win," said Yang, "then everything will change. The entire galaxy believes that is a god. They believe he is invincible. If a human defeats him, then people will have to question everything they believe about strength and power. They will have to think differently about what makes someone great. That is a big change, and big changes are scary." Wu reached over and held his hand. "The galaxy needs this change," she said quietly. "They need to know that strength is not the only thing that matters." Yang knew she was right. He had known it from the beginning. Tomorrow would be the biggest day of his life. Tomorrow he would stand in the arena face to face with. Tomorrow he would execute his plan. Tomorrow the galaxy would learn that there are many ways to win a fight. As Yang fell asleep that night, he thought about all the creatures watching him from across the galaxy. They were waiting to see if a human could do the impossible. They were ready to laugh at him or cheer for him. But Yang knew something that they did not. He knew that the champion was not really invincible, and tomorrow he would prove it. The morning arrived with the sun rising over the crystal towers of Or. Yang woke early and went directly to the equipment shops near the arena. He had 5 days until the match. 5 days to prepare. 5 days to make sure everything would work exactly as he had planned. Wu came with him carrying a small computer device. They had written a program together that would help them analyze everything. As they walked through the market, they saw signs everywhere advertising. Posters showed his face. Messages said that he was unbeatable. One shop had a statue of the champion made from real crystal. It was tall and beautiful and seemed to shine from within. Yang did not feel discouraged by any of this. He had spent 3 weeks watching fight. He had recorded every match and studied every movement. He had discovered patterns that the champion probably did not even know about. Most fighters did not try to exploit these patterns because they could not hurt physically. But Yang was not going to try to hurt him that way. At the first shop, Yang bought a high-frequency sound emitter. It was a small device that looked like a cylinder. When activated, it would produce sounds at a frequency that human ears could not hear, but that would bother many alien species. The shopkeeper, a small insect-like creature with many eyes, tried to explain how it worked. "This device creates vibrations in the air," said the insect. "The frequency is strong enough to cause discomfort to nervous systems of the race, but it causes no physical damage. The body is protected, but the mind feels the effects." Yang bought it immediately. The keeper thought it was strange that a human wanted such a device, but he did not ask too many questions. Money was money. At the second shop, Yang found a concentrated light source. It was a powerful beam that could produce light brighter than the sun itself. The seller was a woman named Sun. She had long blue skin and 4 fingers on each hand. "What do you need this for?" she asked. "To see something clearly," answered Yang. Sun laughed, but she sold it to him anyway. The third item came from an old merchant named Minho. He sold mechanical equipment and tools. Yang wanted an air cannon, a device that could shoot compressed air with great force. Minho had one that he used to clean equipment. It was not designed as a weapon, but it was powerful enough to move heavy objects. "This is for cleaning, not fighting," said Minho suspiciously. "Yes," agreed Yang. "I am just going to use it in a special way." Minho sold it to him, but he warned Yang to be careful. The device could break bones if used wrong. Yang thanked him and promised to be careful. The fourth item was the simplest. It was just a steel rod, about as long as Yang's arm and thick as his thumb. He found it in a scrap metal shop. The owner, a female named, looked at him strangely when he asked for it. "Just a rod," she asked, "not even a sword or a spear." "Just a rod," confirmed Yang. She sold it to him cheaply because it was scrap metal. Yang carried it carefully and gave it to Wu to hold. When all 4 items were gathered, Yang and Wu went to see the arena officials. They brought all the equipment to show what he would be using in the match. The officials examined everything carefully. They had a rule that no weapon could cause permanent damage to. Since nothing could actually harm him, technically everything was allowed. One official, a tall creature with green skin and a serious face, looked at Yang for a long time. "What is your plan, human?" he asked. Yang smiled but did not answer. "You will see," he said. The official frowned, but gave permission for all items to be used. Over the next 5 days, Yang did not exercise like a normal fighter would. He did not do strength training or speed practice. Instead, he and Wu analyzed everything they could find about. They studied the way he moved. They timed his reactions. They looked at the order of his movements in every match. They created graphs and charts showing patterns. What they found was fascinating, was fast but not instantly fast. There was still a tiny delay between when something happened and when he reacted. The delay was very small, sometimes less than 1 second, but it was there. His eyes still worked like normal eyes. Light still affected them. Sound waves still reached his ears. His body could not be hurt, but his senses still worked. One evening, Wu asked Yang a question. "What will you do after you win? If you win, I mean." Yang was quiet for a while. "I think everything will change," he said slowly. "The galaxy has believed for so long that it is unstoppable. They have believed that some creatures are just naturally superior to others. If a human defeats him, a soft, fragile human, then they will have to think differently." "Is that good or bad?" asked Wu. "It is necessary," said Yang. "Change is always necessary, but necessary things are not always easy. Some people will be happy. Some people will be angry. Some people will try to say that the match was not fair, but the truth will be there. A human beat the champion by using intelligence instead of strength." Wu nodded. She understood what Yang meant. Humans were not the strongest creatures in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the toughest, but they were good at thinking. They were good at solving problems. They were good at seeing things that other creatures missed. This match would prove that to the entire galaxy. On the 4th day of preparation, Yang took a walk through the city alone. He visited a small temple where many different species came to pray. He sat there quietly for hours, thinking about what he was about to do. He thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about all the humans who had ever been told that they could not do something. And he thought about the champion who had never been beaten. That night, he barely slept. His mind was full of numbers and calculations and plans. He kept checking the equipment to make sure everything was working perfectly. Wu stayed awake with him, drinking hot tea and talking quietly about everything except the match. When morning came on the 5th day, Yang felt calm and ready. The match was tomorrow. Everything was prepared. All his devices were working. His plan was solid. His understanding of was complete. Now it was time to execute the plan and show the galaxy what a human could do. The day had finally arrived. The arena was completely full. Billions of creatures from across 10,000 worlds watched on screens in their homes, in their ships, in their cities. This was the match everyone had been waiting for. The unbeatable champion against a soft, fragile human. The odds were 100,000 to 1 against the human. Nobody seriously believed Yang could win. The arena itself was a massive bowl carved into the ground. The walls rose high above the fighting area. The sand on the floor was red and smooth. Above everything, the sky was bright blue. This was the most famous fighting place in all the galaxy. Yang stood in one corner of the arena. He was alone. His equipment was arranged carefully at his feet. The sound emitter, the light source, the air cannon, and the steel rod. He looked small and fragile in the huge empty space. Then from the opposite corner, entered. The crowd roared so loudly that it shook the ground. The champion was magnificent. His body was made of clear crystal that caught every bit of light and made it dance across his form. He was twice as tall as Yang. His muscles were huge and clearly powerful. When he moved, it was with perfect grace and confidence. He was a creature designed to fight. He was perfection. Looked at Yang and laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. He seemed to think this match was a joke. He had won 847 matches. This human would be match number 848. Easy victory. Nothing would change. The arena official raised a flag. Both fighters moved to the center of the sand. The flag dropped. The match had begun. Yang immediately activated the sound emitter. A high-pitched frequency filled the air. Humans could not hear it, but certainly could. His entire body went stiff. The champion's face showed pain. It was like 1,000 tiny needles pushing into his nervous system. His crystalline body could not be hurt, but the sound waves passed through him. They affected his brain. They reached his ears, and they hurt. The champion staggered backward, his hands going to his head. The crowd gasped. Billions of creatures watching on screens could not believe what they were seeing, was in distress. In less than 5 seconds of the match, the invincible had been made uncomfortable. The first strike was successful. Recovered quickly. He realized that the sound was coming from Yang's device. The champion moved forward aggressively, determined to end this match quickly. But Yang was already executing the second strike. The concentrated light source suddenly activated, pointing directly at its face. The beam was brighter than anything in nature. It was brighter than the sun. Eyes, though protected by crystal, still functioned as normal eyes. They could still perceive light, and this light was overwhelming. His eyes automatically shut. His hands came up to protect his face. His nervous system fired pain signals even though his body was not being damaged. The champion roared in anger and confusion. He had been defeated 847 times, and in those matches, nothing had ever made him close his eyes. No physical attack had ever made him retreat. But light was not a physical attack in the way he understood. It was not something that could be stopped by armor. Yang deactivated the light source. Eyes opened, but they were still adjusting. The champion was temporarily blind. This was Yang's moment. The human picked up the air cannon and aimed it at its legs. He fired. The compressed air released with a loud sound. The force hit the champion's legs like a speeding vehicle. The impact did not hurt him. Nothing could hurt him, but it did move him. His massive body was thrown backward. He fell to the ground. The crowd went completely silent. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The greatest fighter in the galaxy had fallen to the ground. It was impossible. It could not happen. Yet it had. Pushed himself up on his hands. His crystal body was not damaged, but his pride was shattered. This human had thrown him down, in front of billions of watchers, in front of the entire galaxy. The champion's face showed something new: fear. The second and third strikes had worked perfectly. Charged forward with rage. He was moving faster than before, more aggressive than before. He wanted to crush the human. He wanted to end this match and make things return to normal. But Yang was not finished. When the champion got close, Yang dropped everything. He had no weapons. He had no shield. He was completely defenseless, standing with his hands empty. It was a psychological attack worse than any physical blow. This was the fourth strike. Stopped for just a moment, confused. In 847 matches, no fighter had ever simply dropped their weapons and stood defenseless. It was disrespectful. It was strange. It was unexpected. And in that moment of confusion, his confidence completely broke down. The champion did not charge again. Instead, he stood still, trying to understand what was happening. His mind could not accept this situation. His body could not be hurt, but his mind was being attacked in ways he did not understand. Yang slowly picked up the steel rod. He did not use it as a weapon. He used it as a pivot. As finally charged forward in desperation, Yang moved to the side and used the rod to change the direction of the champion's charge. The steel rod pressed against the side, not to hurt him, but to redirect his momentum. The champion could not stop his own movement. He crashed hard into the arena wall. This was the fifth strike. The impact was huge. Dust exploded from the wall. The sound echoed across the arena, fell to the ground for the second time. His crystal body was not broken, but his spirit was. The champion sat up slowly. He looked at Yang with new eyes. For the first time in 300 years, understood something that his armor could not protect him from. Understanding, intelligence, strategy. These things could not be stopped by a hard body. These things could not be defeated by strength. Yang walked to the center of the arena and raised his hands in surrender. The match was over. The human did not strike the champion. The human did not hurt him. Instead, the human had simply shown him 5 different ways that his invincibility was not really invincible. The crowd did not cheer. They sat in shock, trying to understand what had just happened. The odds makers were calculating furiously. The galaxy was beginning to understand that everything they believed about strength had been wrong. Stood up slowly and looked at Yang for a long moment. Then the champion walked out of the arena, his crystal form still beautiful but no longer invincible in the eyes of the galaxy. The age of the unbeatable champion was over. The age of human intelligence had begun. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. Yang had beaten. The invincible champion was no longer invincible. The human had won without even hurting the champion. Messages flew between planets. Communication ships carried the video of the match to every corner of space. People watched it again and again, trying to understand how it had happened. In the hours after the match, the arena filled with reporters and officials and scientists. Everyone wanted to talk to Yang. Everyone wanted to know his secret. How had he defeated the greatest fighter in the galaxy? What was his training method? What was his special technique? The questions came from everywhere. Yang sat in a small room and gave interviews to hundreds of creatures. They came one by one and asked the same questions. He explained his thinking patiently each time. He told them about watching the matches. He told them about discovering patterns. He told them about understanding the difference between a body that cannot be hurt and a mind that cannot be broken. One famous scientist, a creature named who had 3 brains and could think about multiple things at once, asked the most important question. Are you saying that was not actually invincible? Yes, said Yang simply. His body could not be hurt, but he was still a living creature. Everything that is alive has a nervous system. Everything that is alive has eyes and ears. Everything that is alive has a brain that can be confused. Believed he was invincible, but belief is not the same as reality. This answer changed how scientists across the galaxy thought about the match. It was not just about winning a fight. It was about understanding how living things worked. It was about knowing that strength came in many different forms. The merchant, the one who had laughed at Yang before, came to see him after the match. The merchant had 4 blue arms and his face looked sad. Yang remembered this creature. He was the one who controlled much of the betting in the arena. He had made a lot of money when people bet against Yang. You have destroyed many things, said, but his voice was not angry. It was sad. What have I destroyed? Asked Yang. You have destroyed the proof of superiority, said, my people, we have used as a symbol. We told other species that we were naturally stronger. We told them that some beings were just better than others. His perfect record was the proof. Now that proof is gone. Yang listened carefully. He understood what was saying. The merchant was grieving the loss of something important to his culture. I did not destroy anything, said Yang. I revealed something, was never a god. He was just a very good fighter with a very hard body, but having a hard body is not the same as being superior. My species is soft. We are slow. We are weak in many ways, but we are good at thinking. We are good at understanding problems. The match proved that one way of being strong is just as good as another. Was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Maybe you are right. Maybe my people have been wrong for a long time." The merchant left, and Yang did not see him again. The next day, scientists from all over the galaxy started arriving in Or. They wanted to study the match. They wanted to understand what had happened. Universities wanted to hire Yang as a teacher. Military organizations wanted to learn his tactics. Governments wanted to discuss what this meant for their defense systems. Everyone wanted a piece of Yang. He refused most of the offers. He only wanted to talk to Wu and to answer honest questions from real scientists. Wu came to find him in his hotel room. She was holding papers and looking excited. "Do you see what is happening?" she asked. "Your match is changing everything. People are thinking about strength differently. People are starting to believe that intelligence can be as important as physical power." Yang was looking out the window at the city of Or. "That was the whole point," he said. "Not to prove that humans are better, but to prove that there are many ways to be strong." "You should write a book," said Wu. "You should tell the story of how you trained, how you studied, how you found the weaknesses. People need to understand how you did this." Yang thought about this idea. It was a good idea. A book could help people understand his philosophy better than interviews. It could help them see that strategy and intelligence were just as valuable as strength. On the 5th day after the match, Yang was walking through the marketplace when he saw something that made him stop. A group of young aliens, but much smaller, were practicing with strange weapons. They were not training to be stronger. They were training to think faster. They were trying to solve problems like puzzles. An older saw Yang watching and came over. "Your match has inspired them," said the elder. "They want to learn your way. They want to train their minds, not just their bodies." Yang felt something in his chest. This was what he had hoped would happen. Not that everyone would copy his exact tactics, but that people would start thinking about different ways to be strong. The elder continued, "Himself has gone away. No one knows where. Some say he is trying to understand what you taught him. Some say he is learning how to think differently." This news gave Yang hope. Had been the symbol of the old way of thinking. If the champion could change how he understood strength, then the entire galaxy could change. That night, Yang and Wu sat together under the stars of Or. They looked at the beautiful city full of creatures from 1,000 worlds. They talked about what would happen next. They talked about the academy they wanted to create, a place where beings from any species could come to learn the art of strategy and understanding. "Do you think they will really change?" asked Wu. "Do you think one match can change how the galaxy thinks?" "Yes," said Yang with confidence, "because the match proved something that cannot be hidden anymore. It proved that understanding is power. It proved that every creature, no matter how strong, has a weakness. And it proved that the way to win is not always to be stronger. Sometimes the way to win is to be smarter." The stars above them twinkled like diamonds. Yang knew that somewhere in the galaxy, billions of young creatures were watching recordings of the match. They were learning. They were thinking differently about strength. They were beginning to understand that there were many ways to be powerful. The human had not just won a match. He had won a chance to change how the entire galaxy thought about itself. 5 years had passed since the match between Yang and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The old ways of thinking about strength were disappearing. New ideas were growing everywhere like seeds planted in good soil. Himself had disappeared from public view. Some creatures claimed he was dead. Others said he had gone to a hidden monastery on a far planet to find peace and understanding. But the truth was different. The champion was alive and well. He had simply chosen to step away from the life he had known. He was learning what it meant to be vulnerable. He was discovering that survival without invincibility could be the greatest strength of all. The warrior spent his days in a quiet place on a moon called N. He lived in a small house far away from cities and noise. He studied philosophy and art. He read books and thought about life. He learned that the strength he had valued his whole life was only one kind of strength. Intelligence was strength. Patience was strength. Understanding was strength. These things took time to develop. These things required effort in ways that physical training did not. Meanwhile, the arena had made new rules. No longer would matches be decided just on physical power. The officials created new types of competitions. There were matches about strategy. There were matches about solving problems quickly. There were matches about understanding an opponent's psychology. Mixed species tournaments became common. Creatures that had never fought before, soft creatures, weak creatures, intelligent creatures, started participating. The results were amazing. Humans turned out to be wonderful at strategy matches. Their brains worked in ways that made them excellent at solving problems. Other species that had been considered weak started winning competitions. A small plant-like creature from a far planet won a major tournament by using patience and planning. A four-armed named Min won a match about psychology by understanding her opponent so well that she predicted his every move. 6 months after the match, Yang and Wu had opened their academy on a neutral planet called X. The academy was built on a beautiful piece of land with mountains and water. The building was made of stone and glass, designed to be welcoming to creatures of all types. The Academy of Understanding taught philosophy, strategy, psychology, and the science of how different creatures thought. Yang was the main teacher, but Wu also taught classes about how technology could be used in smart ways. They had other teachers too, scientists, philosophers, and strategists from dozens of different species. Students came from everywhere. Young came to learn that strength was not everything. Young humans came to learn how to use their natural intelligence better. Young came to understand that their value was not just in the betting markets. Every day, the academy filled with creatures eager to learn a new way of thinking. One day, a student asked Yang a question during class. "Master, do you think that physical strength is no longer important?" Yang smiled. This was a question he had answered many times before. "No," he said. "Physical strength is still important. It is still valuable. A strong body can do things that a weak body cannot. But strength of body is only one kind of strength. Strength of mind is equally important. Strength of character is equally important. A being who is strong in all these ways is far more powerful than a being who is strong in just one way." The student nodded, understanding the lesson. 2 years after the match, the 5 strikes had become something of a legend across the galaxy. Scientists wrote papers about them. Philosophers debated their meaning. Art students created paintings and sculptures showing the 5 moments of the match. Children in schools learned about the match as part of their history lessons. The 5 strikes had different meanings for different people. Some saw them as proof that humans were superior. Others saw them as proof that intelligence was superior to strength. But the most important meaning was deeper. The 5 strikes proved that every single being in the universe, no matter how strong, had something that could be discovered and understood. Yang did write a book, as Wu had suggested. The book was called The Strength of Understanding, and it became a bestseller across the galaxy. In it, he explained not just his match with, but his entire philosophy about strategy and intelligence. He wrote about how to observe an opponent. He wrote about how to think about problems in new ways. He wrote about how communication and understanding could be more powerful than violence. The book was translated into hundreds of languages and dialects. Young creatures from every world read it. Old creatures who had lived their whole lives believing in only physical strength read it and changed their minds. The book became a foundation for a new way of thinking that was spreading across the galaxy. 3 years after the match, the government officially changed its philosophy. They announced that they no longer believed that some species were naturally superior to others. They admitted that they had used this belief to gain power and control. They apologized to all the species they had treated unfairly. This announcement shocked the galaxy, but many creatures supported it. The old way of thinking was finally dying. Military organizations across the galaxy started hearing strategists and intelligent beings alongside strong fighters. They created new positions for psychologists and philosophers. They started training soldiers to think as well as to fight. Wars became shorter and less destructive because commanders understood each other better. They could predict each other's moves and often find peaceful solutions instead of fighting. On the 10th anniversary of the match, the Academy of Understanding held a big celebration. Hundreds of former students came back to visit. They told stories about how the Academy had changed their lives. Some had become teachers. Some had become scientists. Some had become leaders of their worlds. All of them had been changed by what they learned about understanding and strategy. Yang stood in front of the Academy building and looked at all the creatures around him. Humans and plant-like creatures, flying beings and swimming beings. All of them had come together to celebrate a new way of thinking. He thought about, alone on the moon still learning and growing. Wu came and stood beside him. "Are you happy?" she asked. Yang thought about the question. He thought about the match. He thought about the 5 strikes. He thought about the changes that had spread across the galaxy. He thought about young creatures learning that there were many ways to be strong. "Yes," he said, "I am very happy, but I am also responsible. What I did changed everything. I helped create a new way of thinking. Now I have to make sure it grows in the right way. I have to make sure that intelligence and understanding are used for good things, not bad things." Wu smiled. "You are a teacher now, that is your purpose." The sun was setting over the mountains of X, painting the sky with orange and purple colors. Below them, in classrooms inside the academy, young creatures from 1,000 worlds were learning about strategy and understanding. They were learning that strength came in many forms. They were learning that the only real limit to what you could do was the limit of your imagination. The match between Yang and had changed everything. The 5 strikes before the real fight had shown the galaxy a new way to think about power, and that change would continue to ripple across the universe for generations to come. Because once a being understood that intelligence could be as powerful as strength, that understanding could never be forgotten. The human had not just won a match. He had won a revolution of the mind, and that revolution was just beginning to change the galaxy forever.